mindfulness is a big, it's a growing thing that I'm noticing anyway. I mean, I'm a bit of American football fan, and this guy Pete Carroll for the Seattle Seahawks has hired a guy whose specialism is mindfulness, and he's been coaching the team, kind of thing. But it seems to me to be about awareness. It's about consciousness. It's about knowing who you were just talking about knowing who you really are, and who you really are is not who you think you are. Getting deep now. But I was so you were just saying that the people who find it hard. Well, actually, you see, I was never a self-help person. I didn't have anything to do with self-help until 2010, and I fortunately, I went to an NLTP conference and I bumped into Jamie Smart, and he was talking about the principles, and I just kind of went, oh, that's the thing, and went that direction. So that was really good.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm an overthinker. I think I think some of my previous success was all about the fact that I could analyze and formulate plans and control things and manage and so on, stuff to come about. So to let go, that's a total other end of the scale for me. And I suppose that's where my story, when I am letting go, that's where my stories come to play. It's like, well, normally in this situation, you would have done this. You'd be thinking that, you'd be doing the other. But since Salt Spring, since I've been to Salt Spring, what I experienced at Salt Spring was that feeling. When you hit the factory reset button and you go back to towards who you truly are, actually the radio signal is so much better. The music is so much easier to listen to.
Yes.
And from that place, you can really go. You can see that a lot of the thinking is just static and interference, and it's not there's no juice to it. There isn't the same juice to it.
Yes, fascinating, isn't it?
But I still think it's amazing that you could go and. I mean, a lot of people would go and sit in, but if they had the prospect of being in a hut for 5 months with just monthly visits, kind of thing, in the wide open, would go stir crazy. I think.
Yes, cabins. It was, yeah. I suppose that's common. But like you say, if you have that default setting button pressed, then anything else that comes in, like you said, is just like static on the radio. It's not real. You see it for what it is. It's like I'm no different from anybody else. I still get lost in states of mind that I don't feel comfortable in. But what's fascinating about that, and I was talking the last time I spoke to Dick, and we were talking about this a little bit, and I said that the most fascinating part about that is that I know that I can pass through any state of being, however uncomfortable it is, somewhere in the back of my mind, even during those negative states of mind, there's a part of me that knows this is not real and it will not last. It will always pass. It's real in the moment, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's not real, it's not real. It's real in that I'm experiencing it in the moment. I'm creating that experience. And so somewhere in the back of the mind, there's always that understanding that this will pass. That it doesn't really, like you said, it doesn't really have any substance. It lacks juice, it lacks power. And so I can get lost in my thinking, get upset about something, get angry about something else, and then it's gone. And I'm also fortunate. I have a wife that whenever I'm in one of those states, she usually just laughs at me, and that's usually enough for me. She recognizes I'm beginning to, or she might actually occasionally say things like, "Oh, you do seem to be getting rather serious." And of course, where do I go with that? Oh yeah, oh yeah. What am I doing? I've got serious. I've taken this whole thing as if it's real, as if it's personal, as if it's substantial, and of course it's not.
I don't think I've reached your level of expertise, or I'm a few times shy of that black belt that you're wearing there, because this is quite interesting as like a kind of relationships thing, but I was saying to you earlier, and I believe it's true that I understand some of Beck's stories now, and she understands some of mine, and there's still a moment like when I'm in my thinking about, when I've got one of my stories and it's really working for me at that moment, she knows it, and she'll go, it's just your what you would call it story, and I'll go, what do you mean? and I can get quite pumped up about it. It's like, because at that moment it still feels pretty real to me, and I suppose
Cool.
I don't have. I do have some separation for it. I think I get what you're saying about in the back of my mind. I know that it's not real, but in that moment, it just feels real. I did a sail trip that went from Athens to the Greek islands, and you have to go out across the Aegean. It's like 14 hours in the big sea, and we were on a 50-foot boat, but I think the waves might have been bigger. The waves might have been bigger than the boat. And you're well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because you'd be there at the wheel, sailing away, and you'd look to your left, and there'd be this huge wave. I mean, big. You go, and your next thought would be: is this wave going under the boat, or is it going over the boat? Like, is it going to come crashing down on it, and all the rest of it? And the answer is that unfailingly, the wave goes under the boat. The boat bobs over the top, and you just carry on. Now, the next thing that happens is there's another wave, and it's no smaller than the last one. But you just know. Then you just know that you're gonna go over the top of it, and then you can start actually enjoying it. Now, 2 or 3 hours in, you've still got moments where you look at a particular wave and you go, no, that looks even bigger. And you get caught back up in it again. But there's this sense of sailing, and I think that's what I'm getting. I think that's the way life's occurring for me more now. It's less about the big wave, and it's more about the sense of sailing. And I think that's what Elsie and Chip have to offer in this school, or had to offer me, was like, feel the sun, feel the wind, even feel the kind of the rhythm and the motion of sailing. There's something so deep. Just to get a glimpse of that really simplifies things.
Mm.
It's that old, I don't know, everybody puts it up on Facebook, the you are the dot on the backside of the universe kind of thing. But you don't see that. You see yourself as omnipotent and all powerful, and you think it's all about you. but it's not about that either. And that was the other thing, I suppose. Apart from anything that was in the content of my trip to Salt Spring, I spent a couple of days with Chip and Elsie and Ken and Jan, and beautiful, simple conversations. There wasn't talk. We weren't talking about the principles, or we just enjoying being together and living. And it's just that beautiful simplicity of the sun. Going back to my story, the sun and the wind and just enjoying the simplicity of it all, you know. And that's what struck me as real. It's like you know, in algebra, if you simplify algebra down, I can remember as a kid getting these algebra, and you get to kind of 1 = 1, and you go, no, it can't be that. You know, the answer, it's got to be something more complicated than that. And that's, to me, that's where it's all at. It's like, no, it's just 1 = 1. That's it.
Yeah. That's it. Well, I suppose in a way, anything that, so we can take any field, anything that spends the majority of its time focusing on doing something is going to be drawing the whole idea towards this having meaning. So I'm going to improve this. I'm going to perfect this. You know, who I am, how good I am, how brilliant I am, how magic I am. I'm going to improve this. So it's so focused on, it's looking in the wrong direction. It's looking at thinking that the form is what you improve. Okay, sure, you can do sport and exercise and eat a good healthy diet and keep the body in good shape, but self-improvement it's a myth. It's a myth that's been spun so well that people make a lot of money out of nothing, you know, out of really not, because you don't really go anywhere with it, because you can't improve what's already perfect. And that's why, if you wanted to call the 3 principles a model, which it isn't really, it's more of a metaphor to describe how the universe works, but if you talked about it in terms of it being a model, that's why as a model it's the exact opposite to just about everything else everyone, you know, the world is looking at, because it's saying, look in this direction, look within, but see what's really there isn't what we think is there. It's not this thinking. And all of the processes and practices that the world offers people are oriented towards focusing on and doing something to get to that state that's natural. So it's an irony. You're asking somebody to do something in order to get somewhere they already are. That's why it doesn't work. It's an illusion. You know, that whole thing of self-improvement is just an illusion. There's perfection is already there. The universe is already perfect. You can't improve the universe, and hey, presto, we are the universe. You know, we're just one aspect of it. So in a way, we are both the pinprick on the back end of the universe, but we're also the beauty, the magic, and the expanse of the universe too. We're both. You know, in a way, we are the center of the universe in the sense that we're in all places at all times, because you can't separate yourself from even if we can talk in those terms, though, the unfathomable distance of the universe that our tiny mind can't possibly comprehend. We are connected to all of it. There's no separation between it and us. Therefore, it's one and the same. It's both, we're the back end of it, we're a pinprick on the back end, but also we're the whole thing, the entire universe. Just at the moment, we happen to be in this tiny little bit of form, looking back at itself, but there's no separation between us, what we call us, and every single subatomic particle of the universe, plus, you know, all of that, the great oneness. The vastness of the form of spiritual energy that makes up the universe. And then the tiny bits that we call matter are so, ironically, so, even in scientific terms, so insubstantial. You know, there's more space in the physical body than there is matter. But the way that we operate, we see form. You know, it's so we can make sense of the universe. But why? You know, there's so much. We are emptiness. That's essentially what we are.
But in my book, towards the end of the third part, which is kind of my insights, I talk about all you have to do is play your note. You know, there was if the universe is a symphony, and a symphony is made up of all of the notes, and the notes all harmonize and create a beautiful sound, you know, together, the whole thing, then each one of us is one note in that chord, in that massive, you know, all-encompassing sound. And all any of us have to do is play our note. Now, the great news is that you were born with that note. That's what you are. And the thing that we try and do is somebody comes along and goes, no, you want to play it that way. And you go, okay, I'll try playing it that way. You know? And it hurts. It doesn't feel right, you know? And just to be able to get somebody to see that all you need to do is be you. Be you. That's it. Yeah. Simplest thing.
Well, I think that people aren't wrong when they say things like, well, there are many paths that lead to the same end. And I think that's true. It's just that so far, the way that Sid has explained this seems to be the simplest. And it seems to allow people to access that simple understanding of this is who we really are without having to do anything. I think that's the real difference, is that yes, there are a lot of other paths out there that may lead to the same end, but when you get there, a bit like somebody having done many, many, many years of training, only to realize all of their training is complete and utter rubbish by comparison to teaching someone how they create their own reality. You know, like for Roger Mills and George Pransky and other people that have gone through lengthy training to only realize all of their training was pretty much a waste of time. I mean, Roger actually said to a number of us when we were doing our training with him that he felt embarrassed about some of the things that he'd done to his clients because of what he'd been taught. He realized, obviously, it was all done in innocence, that it was through training. So it's amazing to realize that the simplicity of it has been as simplified as it can be. You know, Sid just always said, keep it simple. And that's one of the dangers. And I know that from reading the history of the three principles, that's what happened to a number of people. People started creating forms and diagrams and documents in order to try and teach this, when ultimately they began to realize, no, as Sid kept saying, and he probably kept telling each one of them, you can only give away what you are. That's all you're sharing, is who you are, what you are. You can't give anything else away. So when you try and turn it into a form, you've got documents and diagrams and programs that are there to guide somebody, like you say, that if you do it this way, if you play your note this way, everything will be fine. People ultimately discover that there's something even simpler than that. It's just, as you said, it's just returning to who we really are. Discovering, rediscovering, remembering who we really are, rather than, so it's getting back to, rather than fighting our way towards. It's a return journey. It's not an outward journey. And I think therein lies the crux.
Well, that's nice. I like that. It's kind of like, because we started this conversation talking about letting go, and I think you've just changed that whole game for me, because in talking about the outward journey and the return journey, letting go is just about coming home, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. When we let go of the search, we find ourselves back at home in that beautiful space.
The other thing that comes to me, going back to my 1 = 1, if one of those ones that I think we've just been talking about is you, the perfect note, then the other one for me is love. You equals love. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Just let me work with this little bit of form for a minute and see if it works. But I've been doing a talk around the UK in 2014, introducing people to themselves, and I called it the power of love, and because it was to a kind of mind, body, spirit kind of crew, and they wanted to hear something esoteric. So to get 37 people in a room, or whatever the full room capacity room was, that was the title that I put up, and it worked. It got them there, and it was fantastic, because all I was doing with them, going back to my factory reset, was going, look, you've got a reset button. Look what happens when you press it. And they'll go, oh yeah, it's great. It was really good. But then when I went to Salt Spring, I was sitting there talking to Jan Chipman, and she was like saying, well, in his early talks, and it transpires that one of the titles he used for his early talks was the power of love. And I was like, well, there's nothing original. But it's, again, in my book, at the end, I think it finishes by saying all you need is love. All you need is a great Beatles song, and that's also, for me, works with your return journey idea, because I don't know about you, but I've been watching a lot of stuff on Facebook in the last couple of weeks. I mean, of course, we know that Facebook is the great reality of this generation, but there's that whole thing that's been going on with the ISIS and the Jordanian pilot who was killed by them, and so a lot of people discussing how this happened and what to do and what's right and what's wrong, and I wonder where love is in all of that. Everybody knows what love is. I'm sure that all the people in an Islamic State have people they love and care about, and as do we.
But I think that the love that you're talking about is so much more vastly deep than just loving each other. And I'm not saying that those people don't have a sense of that either. But what I would say is, looking at it from a different angle, would be that anything we see in the world, and this is stating the obvious really, but anything we see in the world that we see as aberrant or going wrong or bad or evil is simply a lack of love, true love, deep love. Because nobody in a good state of mind, nobody in a beautiful state of neutrality would want to harm somebody, would want to kill somebody, ever, period. It just never would happen. And so anything we see in the world that isn't going right, whether it be at the top with governments, or whether it be individuals doing what individuals can do to each other. It's simply a lack of love, that true love, that deep love, which is essentially another way of describing the entire universe. You know, love is a metaphor for the universe. Universal energy of all things, the intelligence behind life, love. How would it be anything else? How could it be anything else?
Well, it's where you start. You know, if you talk about the journey out, the journey home, it's where you start and where you end.
Yeah. Yeah. In a way, there is only one way back. The return journey is only possible when we let go of the quest, whatever that quest might be. I guess for a lot of people, for most of us, maybe it was the quest of self-discovery.
And the other thing that goes along with that is that, I mean, you were saying right at the start of this that as you been from place to place, I mean, you were letting go of, you were taking a jump into the unknown. Was that your words? Taking a jump into the void. But it sounds to me like it's a returning home type jump. It's an adventure rather than it's not the hard slog of ambition and discovery and, you know, conquering something.
Yeah. But in a way, some people thought that it was a crazy move to why are you moving to Australia right at the point in the history of the principles where, you know, you're known to some degree in the UK and in America, and obviously it was beginning in Europe, and then you're moving away. And I said, well, it's been on the cards for a long while, and it's a new adventure, and I don't regret it at all. It's been wonderful. I mean, I spoke to a gentleman in Sydney recently who was keen to know he came across principles about 3-4 years ago, and he was very keen to know, well, what is actually happening in Australia? And I said, at the moment, not very much. And he wanted to know, what did I think we should do about that? And I said, well, we should certainly make every endeavour to put it on the map, as it were, and allow people to be able to access it. But at the moment, it's still early days. But for me personally, it's been a wonderful adventure. Been a new land. I am coming back to the UK in May, June. But I'm very happy here. If they said there are no planes flying, there are no ships sailing, you're stuck, I'd say, okay, that's fine. I'm home. I'm in a land where I'm kind of in love with the land, so it's all dandy and fine to me.
I always love talking to you, Dean. It's fantastic. Now, just that you're such in such a good place, and you know, living life that for people to be able to live life in and accept the adventure and really welcome it in like you seem to do. I mean, that's brilliant, fantastic.
Well, it's so much to enjoy here as well. Yes, I think most places in the world would look beautiful when we're in that beautiful state. And that's the difference. And I think that's why when I first heard anybody talk about the three principles, it was in a small public talk in my hometown of Colchester when Margaret Opio came to give a talk to talk about what she was creating for schools, a school program. And I saw the face of Roger Mills and I saw the face of prisoners, and I thought, oh my God, these are people that are trapped, some of them for life, and yet there is magic and beauty in their eyes. There's something magical in this. So I knew before I started hearing, I heard, I guess, the echo of truth. It's somewhere in my mind. I was deeply drawn towards it in seeing the shift in people. And one time when Sue Pankovic and I were running the intervention for my research masters, the first day we did with the adults, with the teachers, it was hilarious because we ran for a quarter day and the first quarter was over and it was tea break time and people were going out, and I overheard of one or two teachers saying, "Isn't it funny?" And they were being really sarcastic and ironical. "Isn't it fascinating to see how when people get exposed to this understanding, how eloquent they become?" And that's true. Suddenly you hear, hardened criminals who become eloquent because they rediscover who they really are. I saw a piece of footage from San Quentin prison, and I had never seen it since. I only saw it once. It brought tears into my eyes because it was this man called Fish who'd been taught the three principles by Kathy Casey during the San Quentin visits, and during that time he was sitting on death row waiting for the decision for his court case. And I watched this little piece of video footage of him after his court case. So that the funny story to this is beautiful, that Kathy Casey taught this man, amongst others, the three principles. He gets into such a good space that he is so transformed. Before you go to court, when you arrive in prison, you go through a psychological profiling. When you go to court, they do it again before you actually go to court. The same psychologist did the profiling, and he said, "If you had told me this was a different human being, I would have believed you, because he is so not the man I met before." So Kathy Casey had to go to the court to talk to the jury about what she'd done, because they couldn't understand how this man's psychological profiling could change so much from going to prison to actually coming to court. He did get life, and there's this beautiful piece of footage of him, and you can see that love that we were talking about shining out of this man's eyes. It's just beautiful. And he says something like, "I would rather be in here," meaning prison, "for the rest of my life, knowing what I know now, because I can help people in here, rather than be out there on the streets not knowing what I know now." And I just had tears streaming down watching that man, because I looked at him and I saw him look into the camera, and I thought, this man has heard it as deeply as anyone alive can hear it. And he's living in that beautiful space of magic and beauty, yet he will be enclosed in four walls for the rest of his life. He will never leave that prison, yet live in that state of beauty. So to me, that spoke volumes, massive volumes, for the hope for humanity. Because that's someone on the inside of prison. And most of us are not in prison. Most of us are just out here, but trapped here, trapped in our thinking. And I kind of knew in that moment, there is so much hope for everyone. Sometimes people ask me, "Well, I've done this, this, and this, and that. Do you think that the three principles would still help me?" And I said, "Look, I don't know anyone alive the three principles wouldn't help. I don't know anyone alive. I honestly don't. Because it's the key that unlocks the door to release us, to return home, to see who we really are. And there's nothing really more magical or more beautiful than that, is there? That's it."
No, that's absolutely perfect. I think I knew that not having any agenda for this conversation was perfect, and this whole piece that we've just talked about, the return journey and coming home in love, and being you, it's just been beautiful. Thanks, Dean.
My pleasure. Anytime.